Welcome back to For All Humans. She was a petite woman with a big heart and the courage of a lion. Aptly dubbed the Spy Princess, this young heroine became the first female wireless operator to be sent from Britain into occupied France to aid the French resistance during World War II as a special operations executive agent. It was a vitally important job, but an equally dangerous one, helping to coordinate resistance strategies by sending and receiving messages about planned sabotage operations or about arms needed for resistance fighters. This woman ran the high risk of the Morse code she was transmitting being detected and traced back to her. And if she was caught, she would be tortured and killed. In 1943, an operator's life expectancy was roughly 6 weeks. This is Wanborough Manor near Guildford in Surrey. This is a BMK2 receiver and transmitter, also known as the B2 radio set. It was from here that the Spy Princess began her training as a secret agent. Her story is the stuff of movies, but we haven't seen depictions of her in blockbusters like Saving Private Ryan, Pearl Harbor or Dunkirk. Noor Inayat Khan was only 30 when she was executed in Dachau concentration camp in Germany. She was posthumously awarded the George Cross Award in 1949 from the UK, as well as the Croix de Guerre from France for her courage and bravery. But I'm guessing you've never even heard of her. Think back to all the Hollywood World War movies out there for a minute. When was the last time you saw the protagonist of one of these films be a character with brown skin? Now, when was the last time you saw the main character be a Muslim? And no, the heavily bearded, brown-coloured man speaking with a thick Arabic accent and detonating a bomb while yelling Allahu Akbar doesn't count. He's a stereotype, not a protagonist. According to Hollywood, Muslims didn't play a part in helping to defeat the enemy in World War II, but history tells another story. In his letter to the US President Franklin Roosevelt, the British Prime Minister Winston Churchill himself noted the contribution of Muslims to his army in World War II. He wrote, "We must not on any account break with the Muslims who represent 100 million people and the main army elements on which we must rely for the immediate fighting." According to the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, more than 161,000 Indian Army soldiers were killed in both World Wars. And even though only about 25% of the Indian population was Muslim, up to 40% of the Indian Army was Muslim. The soldiers from the Indian Army that volunteered to fight were volunteers. They weren't forced to fight due to conscription or mandatory service. And yet they came in their droves, so much so that by the end of World War II, the Indian Army had become the largest volunteer army in history. But with such staggering numbers of Muslims participating in the fight against fascism, how come we never hear about these unsung heroes of the war? Well, thankfully, their stories are finally starting to come to light. In 2014, PBS released a documentary entitled Enemy of the Reich about Noor Inayat Khan, but she's only one of the heroic Muslims who sacrificed her life to battle Nazi oppression. The executive producer of the film, Michael Wolff, said there seems to be a tendency to forget that hundreds of thousands of volunteers from India joined the British forces. Many of them were Muslim and they were decorated and died in great numbers. There also seems to be a tendency to leave out of the narrative the Algerians and the North Africans, all of whom were Muslims who fought on the French side in the tens of thousands. In both cases, these were citizens of countries who were under colonial pressure from the very countries that they decided to serve. It was a moral and ethical choice for them to look past their agony to serve a higher purpose. Dr. Azim Ibrahim is a research professor at the Strategic Studies Institute at the US Army War College and international security lecturer at the University of Chicago and a senior fellow at the Center for Global Policy. He says somehow the fact that millions of Muslims chose to fight the Nazis has been overlooked. Likewise, very little is heard about those Muslims who offered shelter to Jews around the world either. As amazing as Noor Inayat Khan's story is, hers is just one story. There are many others yet to tell, and many that have been ignored. Hollywood still struggles with its portrayal of Muslims, all too often reverting to stereotype, even when real-life roles include sacrifice, courage, and loyalty. The contribution of Muslims to our war successes is also glossed over in classrooms and in many history books. Like the story of Dr. Mohammed Helmi and Anna Boris Gutmann. Dr. Helmi, an Egyptian Muslim doctor who lived in Berlin in Germany during the Nazi regime, could not stand silently by as he witnessed firsthand the dismissal of Jewish doctors at the hospital in which he worked, and then later the deportation of Jewish people from Berlin to the concentration camps. He risked his own life and his family's lives to hide one of his patients and her family in his cabin in Berlin. Despite repeatedly being searched and interrogated by SS agents, and despite the rest of Anna's family eventually being caught while in a different hiding spot and revealing during their interrogations that the doctor was still hiding Anna, Dr. Helmi strategically outmaneuvered the regime and did everything in his power to protect her from the Nazis. Anna Boris remained hidden in the good doctor's home for the duration of World War II, and she credits Dr. Helmi for helping her to survive the Holocaust. Dr. Helmi's actions were certainly heroic, but apparently not as uncommon as we might think. In one of the most astounding and underappreciated facts about the war, as is reported in the UAE edition of The National, the only state that came under direct German occupation that had a larger Jewish population at the end of the war than at the beginning was also the only Muslim majority one: Albania. Albanian Jews were almost entirely saved from the Holocaust because the entire society, from the top down, systematically conspired to prevent the Germans from discovering who was Jewish. Throughout the war, nearly 2,000 Jewish people sought refuge in Albania proper. Most of these Jewish refugees were treated well by the local Albanian population, despite the fact that the country was occupied first by fascist Italy and then by Nazi Germany. Local Albanians often sheltered Jewish refugees in mountain villages and then transported them to the Adriatic ports from where they fled to Italy. Albania proper emerged from the war with a population of Jewish people 11 times greater than at the beginning of the war, numbering around 1,800. A groundbreaking project by an organisation called the Forgotten Heroes 1419 Foundation has just recently, for the first time, documented the contribution of all the Muslims who fought and worked for the Allied forces during the First World War. After 6 long years of delving into military, diplomatic and private archives, including diaries and letters across 19 countries, researchers are getting a clearer picture of just how many Muslims contributed in various capacities in the war. They estimate that 2.5 million Muslims contributed to the Allied cause, either as soldiers or labourers, and the numbers are broken down as follows. Soldiers: 400,000 Indians in the British Indian Army, 200,000 Algerians, 100,000 Tunisians, 40,000 Moroccans, 100,000 West Africans, 5,000 Somalis and Libyans in the French Army, 5,000 American Muslims, and 1.3 million Russian Muslims. Labourers: 100,000 Egyptians, 35,000 Chinese Muslims, 130,000 North Africans, 200,000 sub-Saharan Africans and 40,000 Indians. The founder of the Forgotten Heroes Foundation, a Belgian man named Luc Ferrier, made it his mission to unearth the truth about these forgotten heroes after he came across his great-grandfather's First World War diaries in his attic, in which he wrote extensively about the Mohammedans he had encountered in the trenches. Gripped by the stories, Ferrier delved into the history books to learn more, but found that there was little information available. He began conducting his own research, initially through Belgian and French war records, and he realised there was a bigger story to tell. Ferrier strongly believes that by shedding light on these buried accounts from the past, we can work towards a better future. At a time when many are claiming a so-called clash of civilizations between Islam and the Western world, this research demonstrates that Islam is in fact rooted in the foundations and very survival of Europe. The soldiers and labourers who fought alongside each other during the war may not have shared the same religion, language or birthplace, but they were still brothers in arms, bonded by their common fight for justice. Our project is about making all people across the continent understand that they have a shared history, says Ferrier. This is not about politics or colonialism. We are simply presenting the facts because this is a story that the whole of Europe needs to know. Muslims are portrayed as the enemy within, that they are recent arrivals who have never made a valuable contribution to Europe. But we can show that they have sacrificed their lives for a free Europe. They have helped to make it what it is, and that they have a right to be here.
We hope you enjoyed this episode, so let us know what you think in the comments section. Meanwhile, share this with your friends and stay tuned for the next one.